welcome to my 8th lecture. So we have only 3 lectures to go, then we are done. So are there any questions concerning yesterday's lecture? So of course, as I said already a couple of times, in this course you have to work continuously, otherwise you will be lost from now onwards. So you have to go through what I went through with you always before the new lecture is starting, because I told you from the beginning on that each lecture is building upon the knowledge of the previous lecture. So there's a red line here, obviously. There's no randomness, or at least the randomness is the error here is very little in this course. So most things are planned and they have a certain order. You know? So last time we were talking about what happens if we have volatility clustering going on in our time series. And this is not as fact of financial markets, not only of stocks. We see that also in currencies or in commodities, same pattern. So, and we have seen what happens when you want to estimate the covariance matrix of our point estimate. Now, again, assuming we have a linear model, where y are the excess returns of a single stock, x is our factor matrix, our regressor matrix, and we can use the CAT-M for instance. This is what we have done most of the time, or we can also use other factor models like the 3-factor or 5-factor model or 6-factor model or whatever. Then we get the corresponding point estimates here, beta, and we have also this error term, which is in this linear framework the firm-specific component. Everything is unexplained by our risk factors is captured by the error term u. And here we have the same problem like yesterday. This is jazz here, so I will put it down here. It gets annoyed after some time. So using OLS, our standard formula here, we get also the corresponding estimated errors here for each single stock. And we can store, of course, when we run this model, we can always store the corresponding residual vector that we get from just running the model. And the problem of this equation here is that we cannot simplify this guy here. Earlier we have seen when our standard assumptions hold, the covariance matrix is simply given by sigma hat square times our regressor matrix transpose times itself inverted. But this is not any longer true once we have this volatility clustering going on. Then we cannot simplify this term here, this error term times itself transpose. That's a T by T matrix here. And we have denoted it as omega. So that's the problem here. And so we are supposed to estimate this whole expression here. And of course what we get is a matrix that has the same dimension as this sigma square times x prime x inverted. It's if we use the CAT-M, our sigma square times x prime x inverted is a 2 by 2 matrix. And if we multiply out this expression here, what we get is also a 2 by 2 matrix, of course. And then we remember that on the main diagonal we have the important elements. The first element on the main diagonal is the variance from the first guy in our parameter vector, and so on. So it has the same order as we have the order here in our parameter vector. So, and if we do asset pricing tests, or if we estimate any trading strategy or something like that, of course we want to know if the returns are significant. And therefore we need t-statistics. Therefore we have to know what's the covariance matrix of all point estimates. So, and what we have done yesterday is, okay, we have estimated this expression here by using the estimated residuals. We constructed this guy is T by T, so therefore we constructed a T by T matrix first, consisting of zeros. And therein, we store the corresponding elements that we need, that are the main diagonal again. So what we have done is, okay, we have probed identity matrix that has the same dimension as our matrix consisting of zeros where we want to store the results in. And we operate with two for loops, from t1 equal to 1 to t, and t2 should be from 1 to t, right? So what these two for loops are doing is we go element by element. Yeah? So in the same order that we have here the identity matrix, we go element by element, take the first element, multiply it with the squared first residual, and put it in here, store it in here. So what we get then is, of course, the estimated residual for time t is 1. Yeah? And then our code works so that we go first through all the rows in the first column. Yeah? So in the second iteration then, we would store in here this guy times the second estimated residual squared. But because this is 0, we get also a 0 here. So this remains as a 0, of course. Because what we want to have is we want to have the squared time congruent residuals on the main diagonal, and that's it. Yeah? Because we still assume that the residuals are not autocorrelated, therefore we have above and below the main diagonal the zeros. Yeah? So it goes step by step. After it has completed the first column, and then it goes to the next column, you know? So and then again we have a 0, so this remains a 0 then. But something happens then, of course, here in the second element, because here we have a 1 times the second guy here squared. So, and this is then our estimated sigma squared for time t is 2, yeah? And so on. And finally, of course, we would get here on the main diagonal the last element is our sigma squared for time capital T. Yeah? This is what we have done. That's why we needed these two for loops. Once we have estimated this guy, so what we get is then, of course, our omega hat. It's our estimate omega. And then we just put it in here. And anything else is given already by the data. And then Matlab gives us the covariance matrix for stock I. And then what we have done then again, okay, we took the corresponding values of our beta point estimator. Yeah, we had the alpha here for stock I, and here we had the corresponding estimated beta for stock I, and then we had the covariance matrix, which is a 4x4 matrix. So if we multiply it out using our estimated omega, and then we just grab the guy, like the first element from our point estimator, and divide it by the first element, by the square root of the first element from the covariance matrix, yeah? Which gives us then the t statistic. That's what we have done. Yeah. So hopefully this is clear for you now, or it's clearer than yesterday. Maybe it was a little bit fuzzy yesterday, so that's why I went through it once again. So I will take this away now. If you want to make a screenshot, do it now. That was just a repetition. And of course, you become better at something by repetition. Whatever you do. It's not only in sports, it's also at university. You know. There's no one who's good at something without any effort. So you have to repeat, right? So what's going on today? So what we want to do today is actually we are building upon something that we have already done 2 lectures ago in lecture 4. In lecture 4, you remember we had this training strategy where we divided the whole subsample of t observations into two subsamples. Yeah? We had a first subsample that we used to estimate our parameters, and then we used the second subsample as a sort of out-of-sample or quasi-out-of-sample subsample, where we were running basically the model and wanted to see, okay, if the point estimates are stable, what are then the corresponding returns of our training strategy when we run this out-of-sample. Yeah. So what we do today is that we want to do it iteratively. Yeah? This is a much more realistic example of what we might also do in investment banking. Yeah? So we have, let's say, this is our timeline, and we have capital T observations here. Our sample period is capital T, and in our case it's 250 observations. Yeah. So what we want to do now is, okay, we want to run the same training strategy that we have already done in the fourth lecture. So we want to trade the alpha, yeah, the abnormal return. So again, we want to buy a portfolio of stocks that has the highest alpha, which generates the highest abnormal return, and we want to finance this position by selling stocks that have the lowest abnormal return. Because we will assume, okay, if the point estimates are stable, then they will also be our assets will generate the same return path, including the abnormal returns in the out-of-sample period. So, and last time we divided the sample into two subsamples, and we took one subsample and then we kept this parameter stable across the entire second subsample. We didn't update the model, but as new information arrives, this could lead to changes in the parameter, of course. So I don't know exactly what software you are familiar with, but I think in eBoost it's also possible that if you run an OLS model, that you get a plot of the parameters over time. Is it possible to get it in eBoost? I think so. So it's sort of recursive estimates. So you start with, let's say if you have 120 observations, so you run the model for 30 observations, get point estimates. Then you use 31 observations and you get again point estimates, and so on. So you get like 90 point estimates. Yeah? And you use more and more information. And somehow if the parameters are stable, they should somehow converge. If you have a beta or any point estimate, as more information arrives, you want it somehow to converge. It should be stable, the point estimate. If you see recursive estimates that look like this, they look like a random walk, then obviously this model is not so stable. What you want to see is something that the recursive point estimates converge. It can be a little more unstable in the beginning of the sample. If you have very little observations, that's okay. But as more information arrives, the point estimate should somehow converge. Yeah. So if it's not like that, if you see something like this is obviously a sign for a structural break in the point estimate. So that's why it can make sense to run the recursive model estimates. So you see how our point estimate behaving as more information arrives. So we don't know if there are any breaks in our parameters if we don't investigate that. But in our training strategy, what we do now, we don't bother with that because we take incremental steps. So we start with the subsample. The first subsample is at T1. And the quality of this pen is poor. And T1 is 60 months in our example. So we use the first 60 time series observations, run our model estimates, and we take an incremental step of 1 month ahead forecast. So we use these parameters and get an estimate 1 month ahead. Then we update our model. In the next iteration, we move this time window 1 month forward, and it's from t is, before it was from t0 to t60, now it's from t1 to t61. Again, we run the model, and again we get the 1 month ahead forecast. And then we do it again. Then we add time t is 2, and we move the time window until t is 62. So again, we use 60 months of observations in sample to get a forecast for 1 month ahead. And then again, we update the model again. This is what iterative estimation is doing. So we just use a subsample of information in the most recent 60 months and get the 1 month ahead forecast. Because, I mean, and you can wonder, okay, does it make any sense? Okay, then I can ask you, do you think that information that is let's say, very far in the past, do you think that this has any impact on what is now? If you now remember, in the first lecture, I showed you the plot of telecom stocks, of Nokia, the dot-com bubble. Huge increase in stock prices in the early 2000s, like 98, 99, 2000, in the early 2000s. And then the crash occurred. Telecom stocks were crashing. But then, in the when the second bubble came up, and which ended up in this mortgage crisis, and again, the stock prices on average were increasing, but not telecom stocks. Telecom stocks were in the second cycle, in the second financial cycle, not as much increasing as in the first cycle. So obviously, if you would have would you use that data that is very far away in the past, it would not have made so much sense to use it in a model that basically would forecast only 1 month ahead. The same as if you think about volatility. So what we know is that volatility is autocorrelated. So if you want to have a good forecast of next month's volatility, you would use daily data from the current months. But it doesn't make much of a sense to use like daily data from the last, let's say, 500 days or so. Because volatility is changing every month. So that's what we want to do right now. Any questions? Okay. So then, let's start. So, long-short situation based on CAPM part 2. Exercise. You consider the following in our pricing model for your assets. Again, we have the CAPM, like last time, like all the time, and including interest returns. And that's now what we're interested in again. In equation 1, y IT denotes the returns of stock I. And we have 14 stocks in our sample, we know that already. We have here the market factor, which is the OX30 again. The parameter beta 1 I denotes the market sensitivity or the exposure to changes in the stock index. That's beta 0 is our alpha, this is the intercept or the abnormal return of stock I. And this UIT is the error term, and denotes the residuals of stock I at time t. And this is our firm-specific component. Then we have, of course, RF on both sides of the equation with the risk-free rate, and we use the reprorenta because we are in the Swedish economy now. Also, our task is to implement a trading strategy based on the estimated abnormal returns using a rolling time window of 60 months. Thereby, you are short in the portfolio that contains 30% of the stocks having the lowest abnormal return, and long in the portfolio that have 30% of the stock having the highest abnormal return. So use iteratively a rolling time window of 60 months to estimate the 1 month ahead return of the long short portfolio. And also we want to see what is the Sharpe ratio. And we want to know what are our conclusions. Does it make sense to run this trading strategy anyways? So what's happening here? Again, we define our market vector when it's in our data matrix, the first column. Same thing that we did yesterday. That's nothing new, obviously. Y denotes the gross returns of our stocks, and it's again in column 2 to 15 of our data matrix. Then we have the risk-free rate, which is located in the 16th column of our data matrix. Then again we define the length of our data sample, and this is 215, we know that already. And we can also write here, of course, length of X and length of RF, because all of the vectors and matrices have the same length, the same number of rows. So K is 14, like we always have in our examples. In all of our examples, we use the same number of stocks. Then again, what we do here is we compound first the excess returns. Then we define the excess return of the stock index here, and there are, of course, we know already there are different ways how to do that. That's here the longer way, and yesterday we saw we can just subtract the risk-free rate from the vector of stock returns. Next, we define the rolling time window here. I call it, or I denote it in this notation as capital T1 equal to 60. And of course, you can, in your own code, name it however you want, and you just have to remember what it is. And here, this is of course here not necessary because we have already denoted K as 14 here in the earlier. So you can just, this is just redundant. So then again, what we do is because we use the cat m, so we have in the regressor matrix again in the first column. We have a vector of ones. And in the second column, we have the excess returns of the market vector. Here. So, and this guy here, this is of dimension 60 by 2. We have capital T1 rows, time series observations, and we have two variables, our regressor matrix. A vector of ones for getting the upbound return, and a vector of the corresponding vector of the market excess returns, which gives us then which is associated with the market sensitivity in our estimation procedure. So this command here gives us the corresponding vector of ones that we then later on put into our regressor matrix. So next, we want to store our results somewhere. So I compound here a matrix or a vector of zeros. So again, we want to have what we want to do is we want to store the returns of this long-short strategy for each point in time. So we lose from our data sample capital T1 observations. So our result vector must have the dimension of capital T 215 minus 60. So capital T minus capital T1. And this minus 1 here this is also redundant. So we would basically, that's a small error. I mean, we can also code it like that, but then we miss the last months of forecast. So it's actually then results should be a zero matrix, so zeros, capital T minus capital T1 and 1. So it's a vector of 215 minus 60 by 1 of zeros. And in each iteration, we again store the corresponding excess return of our strategy. So once again, our whole data set is capital T 150 length. because we need the rolling time window of 60 months for coming up with the first point estimate here for our training strategy. We lose the 60 observations for our forecast, because our forecast starts at time 61, capital T1 plus 1. So therefore, this time window here goes away. So it's Iteratively. So that's why our results, we have only results for this time window here. This is 250 minus 60. So then, this is something new. Everything that follows here in the code is actually nothing really new, because we have already done that in the fourth lecture. But what we want to do is now, so you remember what we have done earlier, in our earlier lecture. In our earlier lecture, we have used the subsample, and then we did this estimation only once, and then we were getting the estimate out of sample for each point in time out of sample, using the same point estimates of our in-sample period. So we have not updated it. But the difference is now that we move this time window 1 month forward after each iteration. So that's why we need one more for loop, like an outer for loop, we put this new for loop outside of the earlier code. That's basically the idea how this code is working out. Because we update this model now iteratively, we need one more for loop to store our results in. And that's why we need this for loop here that runs from t is equal to 1 to capital T minus T1. And minus 1 is again redundant, so it should be actually then the for loop from small t is 1 to capital T minus T1. Yeah? That's the way how it should be. So in everything that is now below this for loop here, everything that is below this for loop here is overwritten after each iteration. So in each for loop, we estimate the whole model for all the stocks and so on and so forth. We estimate the trade strategy, we store everything. Then what we do is then we get the 1 month ahead forecast, put it in the result vector here, and then we delete everything and estimate it again for the next time window. So the whole information we don't need, we are not interested in. I mean, of course, when you write a master thesis or when you do any other kind of research, it could be that you are interested in the point estimates on the way. Who knows what you do in your master thesis? And of course, then it could make sense, that you basically you can here, before you start this for loop here, you can define other matrices as well. You can use this code as well, basically for getting these recursive estimates. You can also code here another matrix consisting of zeros, having the same length here, of course. It must have the same dimension. And you can get for each iteration, you can store the corresponding point estimates, the alpha and the beta, for each of the stocks. Of course, you can do that as well, using the same code. And then you would get for each time window of 60 months the corresponding point estimates of your that the cap M is delivering. Yeah. And then you can see, okay, how are the betas actually behaving? Are they really constant over time, or is there something strange going on? And the same for the upward returns. So people in finance applications, for instance, this Farmer and French, the standard backbest regressions. They also use in one of the versions, I told you during graph and course, there are different versions of this model, but in the more sophisticated version, they use also a time window of 5 years, which is 60 months, for getting the beta estimate of all stocks. And then, they do it also iteratively, exactly how we do it here. So you can do, of course, many things here. And once you know what you are doing here, then there is no limit. So again, we totally follow here. So this is something new. What comes here? So first, we start everything with storing the betas for the first iteration. So we construct a matrix of zeros, which we call here beta, which has the dimension k by 2. 2 because we have two factors here, two variables in our pricing model. The intercept term and that gives us that's associated with our return, and here we also get the point estimate for market sensitivity, and k, the 14 are the stocks that we have in our sample. In each iteration we have of course the same number of stocks. So then what follows here is also, it's nothing new, nothing really new at least. So we have another for loop where we basically get the corresponding point estimates for each single stock in our sample. So we get the corresponding alpha and beta for each of the stocks in the same order as they are in the excess return matrix. So, and I told you already here, what we have here in this parenthesis, this is nothing else but the X matrix, the regressor matrix, for the first iteration. So how is it defined? It's constant, and we know already what constant is. It's a vector of, it's a 60 by 1 vector of ones, simply. And what else do we have? x1, and we know already x1 are the excess returns of the market vector. We have coded that already before. But now, we say, okay, we start at t, and if the loop begins, obviously, the outer loop begins at t is 1. So, and we grab now the information from 1 until 1 plus t1, this is 60, minus 1. So, t is 1 in the first iteration, We are in the outer loop now. So, if t is 1, we get the, maybe I can put it like that. So this is our x1 vector, It's a capital T by 1. And we have here the exact returns of the market vector at time t is 1, and so on and so forth. And here and the last element are the exact returns of the market vector at time capital T. So in the first iteration, if t is 1, this command here tells that, okay, go to the first element, 1, here. Double point means until 1, and t1 is 60, right? So 1 plus 60 minus 1 is, yes. So it goes now to 60 here and gets this partial vector here and puts it here. So, and of course it must have the same dimension as this guy, otherwise we cannot operate with the matrix. So that's our X matrix here. So that's it. And then everything, what you see then in the code is it's just this simple formula. Like X transpose, we transpose this guy times itself inverted times itself transposed minus Y, which is of course the exact returns of the first stock. Yeah. Because this command here, we can move here to this whiteboard. Y1 T double points T plus capital T1 minus 1 comma I. What does that mean? So I is in the first iteration here 1. So it does something using the first stock, obviously. You know, so this is 1, and small t is also 1 in the first iteration. This is 60. We know that already. So it grabs from the exact return matrix in the first column, and this is where the first stock is located, the observations 1 to 60. And of course, it must be the same. It must be time congruent with what we get here from with the information that we get from the regression matrix. Yeah? So we take the first 60 observations for the first stock here, which we need here as a regress send. Yeah? So doing this procedure, we get the corresponding alpha and beta estimates for the first period for the first stock. Then everything here remains still the same. And then we are now in this for loop that runs from I is 1 to k, and then it does the same thing using the stock number 2, and gets again. So the only thing that changes then is obviously this guy here. Then it gets the corresponding exact return from the second stock. And again, we get the corresponding parameter estimates for this first subsample time window. So it does so from 1 to capital K. Capital K is 14. So until we have done this estimating procedure for all our K stocks in the sample, and then we store the corresponding parameter estimates again in our zero matrix that we defined here as beta. And this is nothing new. This is what we have already done earlier. The only thing that was new here was how we get the time congruent information out of the regressor matrix and from this exact return matrix. That's the only thing that is new. And now we can think, of course, what happens, if everything is completed, and then we go back to the outer and then t is 2. So the same, we do basically the same again, but then obviously this is 2, and it gets the information from these exact returns from 2 until 61. Yeah. 2 until 2 plus 60 minus 1 is 61. And then it does the same thing all over again. And regressing it and using the exact returns for each of the stocks for the period 2 until 64. And again storing the betas and so on and so forth. And then we have the same problem that we had in the fourth lecture. We want to sort, our beta matrix is a 14 by 2 matrix in each iteration, and we want to sort with respect to the first column, because in the first column of our beta matrix we have the point estimates of the abnormal returns. So we sort our beta matrix with respect to the first column. Yeah. And again, we use this command here that we have already encountered. Yeah. And actually, I didn't know this command by myself, so when I prepared these lecture notes, then actually I was also supposed to look it up. But in Google you find technically everything. You just have to somehow filter what information is nonsense and what is useful. That's the job basically when you use Google. So, and what this code is doing, sort, and then what do we sort? Okay, our beta matrix. So what this code is doing, it sorts something, yeah, and what does it sort? Which this is in parentheses here. It sorts our beta matrix. And which column do we sort? We sort the first column. This is what this command means. And what Matlab that automatically gives us is a vector denoted as z and a vector denoted as I. And this z, in this z, Matlab stores the elements in the first column, which are obviously all abnormal returns, in an increasing order. Yeah. And this I gives us the information where to find. Yeah. So where are the elements located that are in that order here? So then the next command here, we want to retrieve the corresponding sorted matrix, which we denote as beta underscore sorted, that sorts our original beta matrix in this order that we have determined here, with respect to the first column. So this is what the second command here is doing. Beta underscore sorted is equal to beta and a parenthesis I, our indicator, and this double point. The double point means, okay, we want to have all columns sorted, but with respect to I. And I gives us, again, the information about the abnormal returns. Where to find the abnormal returns that have this order here. Yeah. So and then this is what we get for the first iteration. Yeah. So this means in our sample of stocks, the stock that has the lowest abnormal return is minus 1.32% per month, and the corresponding market sensitivity exposure against market factor is 1.57. So the last guy here in the order has abnormal return positive 1.25% per month with a market sensitivity of 1.31. Using the first 60 observations. Yeah? Now we just use the first 60 observations. The model is working very well and is stable, and we would assume that in the forecast period 1 month ahead, we get the same estimate. So the spread between minus 1.32 and 1.25 is 2.57%. That's a good return, right? Per month, unlevered. But of course, in order to get more stability, we do a portfolio analysis. So we take a portfolio equal-weighted of those stocks that have the highest abnormal return, which are these guys here, and we sell those stocks that have these abnormal returns here. We sell those 4 stocks and buy these 4 stocks here. And that's what the rest of the code here is doing. Yeah. That's again nothing new. This is already something that we have seen in the lecture number 4. Yeah. Just that we now condition everything using only the first 60 observations. That's now the only difference. So again, we do the same thing. We first determine how many stocks are in the first group. Where's the last stock in the second group? Then we have the corresponding marginal values here of the alphas here. Yeah, this guy here, and we know that all the alphas, all the guys that have alphas that are below this guy here are in the first group, yeah, and all those guys who have alphas that are higher than this alpha here, they are in the third group that we want to buy. Okay, that's exactly what we do here. Yeah. So we have already gone through that here. Then we code the groups based upon the first column of our beta matrix. And we do the same for the second group here. All this is nothing new. We have already seen that. On the third group, of course, and of course you know already, you can code it also as a vector of 1s minus group 2 minus group 1. Because of course we use all stocks in our universe, and all these three groups sum up to one vector of 1s. So we can also easily, we do not have to code the last group like that here. We can just subtract it from we can just code it as a vector of 1s minus the previous vectors here, group 1 and group 2. So then, we want to get the out-of-sample performance 1 month ahead. So also what is here, it's nothing new per se. So we are long underscore portfolio. What is that? What we get here are the excess return for 1 month ahead, for the third group. Group 3 is a 1 again, it's a 1 by 14 vector of zeros, it's a binary vector of zeros and ones. Ones wherever we have this high beta stocks, high alpha stocks, and zeros elsewhere. So we multiply it with our excess return matrix y1. So, and what information do we get? So it's capital T in the first iteration. Now think about it. T is 1. So, and it goes into capital T plus 1 is 61. Yeah? Capital T1 is 60, and small t is 1, so this is 61. So it goes to row 61. I told you already what we have first is the row index, and second, what is second here after the comma is the column index. Yeah? So it goes to row 61, which is here. And this upper point means take all columns. So, and of course, in our Y matrix here, Y1 matrix, in row 61, we have the corresponding excess returns of each single stock. So 1, 2, 3, until 14. Yeah. So then we multiply the group 1 vector, the group 3 vector, which is 1 by 14, with this guy here transposed. So we have to transpose this guy so that it becomes 14 by 1. Yeah? And 1 by 14 times 14 by 1 is a scalar, which simply gives you, multiplies basically, if you think about it, the vector of zeros and ones, it has zeros, ones, zeros, zeros, ones. So it multiplies, it sums up, it multiplies the first element, it's a scalar product, the first element of our group 3 vector with the first element of this electrical matrix, and it sums up the multiplied products here, step by step. And whenever there's a 1, it adds basically the corresponding excess return from that stock that we want to have. So it's simply the scalar product. And then we divide it by the number of stocks, sum of group 1. It gives you the number of stocks that are in this portfolio. And it's of course 4, we know this already. So once again, so in the first iteration, we know that we use only the observations 1 to 60. 1 to 60. And we have the forecast for time period 61. In the next iteration, we would move it one. If we would move it 1 month forward, we would get the information here from 2 until 61, which is again 61 observations, and get the auto-send forecast for 62, because then if small t is 2, and capital T1 is 60, this is 60 plus 2 is 62. And then again, it would build the scalar product of this group 3 vector, which is then obviously new, with this whole next line of excess returns for the time period 62. So then, this is a long portfolio, then the short portfolio, short underscore portfolio, do the same thing, but for group 1. And in group 1, we know we have stored the locations of where to find the stocks that have the lowest outbound returns, given or conditional on the first time window. So then, long underscore short underscore portfolio is our long-term strategy. Is obviously the long portfolio minus the short portfolio, which is the excess return of the long portfolio minus the excess return, or the average excess return of the short portfolio. So then, now we have done what we wanted to do. We are still at time t1. So now we store the excess returns, or the average excess returns for our training strategy, in our result vector. And one more time, this result vector, that we call it as vector of zeros, we have to put it outside the first for loop. Otherwise, it is always overwritten in each iteration. So you have to put this guy first when you create this vector. In order to store it, in order to store the results, you have to put it outside the first for loop. And then, when you want to store the information, you do it in the end, before you end this for loop. Here we end the outer for loop. And exactly before that, we store the corresponding results for the first iteration here. So then here we have the number. Once we have completed that, we do the same thing all over again, but using then the next time window. So we move it 1 month forward, and then we use the same. We use the observations from time t2 until 61. Get running OLS again for all the stocks, and again sort them, and so on and so forth. Determine where to find the stocks that have the lowest and highest upward returns, and of course this is now deviating, it's always changing over time. For each time window we have different stocks that are in the low alpha and the high alpha group. So we have different stocks, so we have to rebalance our long short strategy every single month. So we have a pretty high turnover here going on. Is it clear, everybody? What's going on here? If not, then of course you can ask questions. So, of course, this might be probably too complicated to ask this in the exam. That's probably nothing that I would ask in the exam. Probably not. But you understand the logic here, yeah? And of course, if you write your master's thesis, then who knows? I mean, but maybe you are interested in this parameter evolution over time, and then of course you can write a similar code, you know, where you store the time varying meters or articles or whatever. And of course, you know, if you have stocks, maybe there are some stocks that are very profitable in the early sample, and they are less profitable in the lower sample of your data. Who knows? I mean, this can of course change over time. And then this might be of interest, or if you want to investigate that. And you can of course determine the profitability of the company by the loading against the profitability factor. If the loading is highly positive, then it means, okay, your company is obviously profitable. And if it's negative, then obviously not profitable. So who knows what you do in matrices? But of course you can do many things if you use Matlab. So there's no limit. So then, of course, we want to see how would have this strategy performed out of sample. Yeah? So we have probably 15 minus 60 out of sample observations, so much more than we had last time. Yeah. And so what we do here is, so we plot our returns of the long short portfolio, and what we do is how we do it. We just write, you know, after this outer for loop is completed. So we have here information in our result vector, so that we know already the plot command. So we just write into Matlab plot, and what should we plot? Results. No, then you have to just push the enter button, and then Matlab plots you what is the imperatives, and that's your result vector of our training strategy. So that's basically the evolution over time. And what have we been talking about last time? Last time we have been talking about volatility clustering. So we were saying, okay, stocks or assets, or the uncertainty or the volatility of stocks is changing over time. And that's exactly also what we see here. Exactly the same pattern. You will see it again and again. So we have time periods where the volatility is low, and we have time periods where the volatility is very high. Like here in the early sample period, or here in the later sample period, high volatility. And here in the middle, we have a pretty low volatility of our zero-cost portfolio. And what we have is a zero-cost portfolio. It's a self-financing strategy. And this is actually also what hedge funds are doing. They construct self-financing portfolios. Nowadays, what is very popular in the finance industry is sector investing. So what they do is they grab stocks. They have a certain stock universe. Let's say the NYSE stocks, and then they sort stocks with respect to high profitability value stocks that are winners and that have a low asset growth. So they condition on, let's say, 4 different variables or 4 different characteristics. They want to have stocks that are profitable, that have a high mark-to-market ratio, that have low asset growth, and that are winner stocks, so that have performed very well in the last 12 months. So all of these characteristics are associated with positive returns. And if you combine that, you might think that such a portfolio might generate high excess returns compared to the benchmark, right? So this is what people are doing nowadays. If you run a hedge fund, you would finance this position by a portfolio of stocks that are unprofitable, loser stocks that have a low book-to-market ratio and a high asset growth. So now we want to know what's the mean. Okay, what's the average sample average of our portfolio? So the answer is it's negative. It's minus 0.09% per month. And the volatility is 5%. So obviously, this trading strategy did not pay off, given our data. And again, you can wonder, okay, what's the reason? Is the model maybe wrong? There are many reasons possible. There are many explanations for why this is so. First of all, the parameters could be estimated wrongly, so we hadn't have this omitted variable problem that we discussed a couple of lectures ago. If the asset pricing model is wrong, obviously our parameter estimates are wrong as well. So the whole model is not valid. It could be that the parameters are varying over time, so that we have a high variation going on in the alphas. It could be that that our trading strategy was not market neutral and that the market went into the wrong direction, and therefore, because of the market exposure of our zero cost strategy, we have this negative return. So there are many different explanations possible for why this is so. Yeah. Yeah. So next lecture, we want to talk about Farmer-Macbeth regressions. Next lecture is the 9th lecture, yeah. So we have to talk about Farmer-Macbeth regressions. So we have already slightly discussed that issue during the RFM course, but we will do it more in detail next time. And you will also get the code how to do that, basically. Yeah. And that's maybe an interesting topic also for some of you, depending on what you want to do in your master's thesis. But that's of course something that you cannot do in EVUs. So one of my students, Malika, very smart woman, and she is now writing a master's thesis about hedge funds and the market timing ability of hedge funds using a sample of, I don't know, was it like 7-8 years or something? It was like 10 or later. And she has like, I don't know, thousands of hedge funds in the sample. And she wants to do this market timing regressions. So you have like a time series dimension. So you run a time series regression for, let's say, 2,000 stocks. 2,500, oh, sorry, we have now hedge funds. So we have like, let's say, 2,000 hedge funds. So the cross-sectional dimension is 2,000. And you use like sort of 5 years of data, which is like 60 months, or if you use 7 years or 8 years, it's 84 months. So you have 84 months available in the time dimension, but you have 2,000 observations in the cross-sectional dimension. So what you do then, what this Farmer-Macbeth regression is doing, so if you want to have an inference, if you want to make a conclusion in the cross-section, if you want to investigate, okay, how is the average market timing ability of these 2,000 hedge funds. So what you have to do is you run first in the time dimension the regressions, and it could be that some of your hedge funds, you know, that they have only time series observations like in the early sample period, but not in the later sample period. But that doesn't matter for Farmer-Macbeth regressions, because what matters is, okay, given our time period, yeah, we get some beta estimates. So and it doesn't matter if the time dimension is not the same across the assets. That doesn't matter. But we have the same model in a time series dimension. The model is the same, but not necessarily the sample period. Yeah? So we get beta estimates for all of these 2,000 assets in the time dimension, and then we run again a cross-sectional regression. And then we can see, okay, does the variation of the betas explain something of the average returns of the hedge funds? That's what he's doing. Yeah. So, and of course you can do this, or you can use this pharmacometric reference for many different other research questions as well. It's a method that is frequently used in finance research, actually. So not only in finance research, but in particular in finance research. So that may be important to know for some of you who want to do some research in that, or some similar kind of research questions. So this is what we will do next lecture, yeah, 8th and 9th lecture. And then in 10th lecture, last lecture, we will talk about momentum trading strategy, which has a similar logic, that we have a time window. It's then just 12 months, obviously, 12 months time window. Then we sort our stocks into high and low performing stocks, giving this 12 months time window. Then we construct a zero cost strategy, keep those stocks in our portfolio constant 1 month ahead, and then re-estimate the strategy. That's what we do in our last lecture. And then the code that you get, very small changes, minor changes in the code will give you a different momentum strategy. Yeah, so you can implement many different momentum strategies using the same code, doing just very small changes. Doesn't that sound awesome to you? For me, it sounds awesome, but well. If there are no questions, then we can finish off this.